I'm back with your next class. In today's class, we are going to discuss a few important topics from the chapter Strategies for Enhancement in Food Production. So let us start with single cell protein, SCP, which is a very important topic for your exam. Now, see, first of all, if we go by the global estimates, around 840 million people, they do not have adequate amount of food to eat daily. Likewise, there are around 3 billion people worldwide who suffer from hidden hunger. Hidden hunger means even if these people are able to eat food, their food do not have adequate amount of nutrients. They lack some or the other kind of nutrition in their food. They do not have a balanced diet. Like they might be lacking in carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and most importantly, protein. So because protein being the most expensive source, so that's why making protein available to the large mass or section of people was a big challenge. And that's why finding out a solution was very important. Now, while trying to find out the solution to protein deficiency, when it was thought that why not we increase the protein content of plants or of crops, it was found that the problem is the agricultural plots are very less, alright, and they are further reducing each year. Why? Because of urbanization or increase in population, etc. So if there are no agricultural fields itself, in that case, increasing the crops which would have higher content of protein would not make much of a difference. When it was thought that why not then increase meat production, it was seen that if we want to increase 1 kg of meat in an animal, we have to feed it with 3 to 10 kg of more grains. Now I just told you we do not have agricultural plots enough to produce crops for food. From where do we increase the feed production, animal fodder or fodder production, isn't it? So even that cannot be done. So it is at that time that the focus was shifted onto the microorganisms. That why not search for certain microbes which can be also growing in very rapid rate for protein, for source of protein. Certain kind of microbes which can be easily taken up as protein supplement in human diet. And when the search started, of course, we landed up with many microbes which can be really acting as a good source of protein and also lower fat. So high protein, low fat is a very desirable feature for human diet, isn't it? So that's why these microbes which can act as a protein supplement for human diet, they were regarded as SCP, single cell protein. So how do you define SCP? SCP itself means certain organisms which are going to produce protein-rich biomass, okay, which can act as a safe and healthy source of protein for human diet. Alright. Now do remember, from this protein-rich biomass, of course, we have to eliminate or we have to separate nucleic acid or else some heavy metals or toxins. Only then they can be consumable. Alright, so let's check out a few important examples under SCP, which is the most important part for your exam actually. So first, among the fungi is mushroom, the most popular. Alright, unicellular, Candida utilis, which is a yeast. Then Fusarium, graminearum. Alright. Under the category of cyanobacteria or blue green algae, BGA, we have to mention spirulina. Spirulina is not only a source of protein, but it is a balanced diet in itself. It consists of carbohydrate, it consists of vitamins, it consists of minerals, it consists of fats. So it's a complete balanced diet in itself. Among the bacteria, would be a very important mention, that is Methylophilus methylotropus. Methylophilus methylotropus is an important mention. Why? Because see, if you compare, a 250 kg cow would only produce 200 grams of protein per day, but these bacteria only around 250 grams can produce 25 tons of protein per day. So in that case, it can grow at a very fast rate, and it can produce huge amount of protein. All right. Next, algae. Among algae, it's a single-celled green algae, Chlorella. That's again an important source of protein. Along with that, it has many other important nutrients as well, like vitamins, minerals, etc. So these being important examples for you to remember. Now the next topic would be very important one, plant tissue culture. So let's start. Plant tissue culture is a very advanced technique which we also refer as micropropagation. Alright. Here we will be extracting certain somatic cells or tissues from a desired plant, and then we will grow them under specific laboratory conditions where each cell will be able to give rise to one plantlet. Alright. So in very less amount of time, we will be able to gain as many copies of a desired plant as many we want. Alright. So this whole process of plant tissue culture is based on the principle of totipotency. That means the capability of a cell to grow up and form the whole organism. Alright. So in plant tissue culture as well, we'll be extracting cells or tissues from a body of a plant and allow those cells to grow up to become the whole plant. Alright. That's why. Now in plant tissue culture, there are certain major procedure that is to be followed. Like first, we have to prepare a culture media. Preparation of culture media. So because we will be growing the cells or the tissues that we extract in vitro condition, means in test tubes or in petri dishes. So that's why it's very essential or very important that we make or prepare important culture media where these cells or tissues will grow. Alright. So now the preparation of culture media would require certain substances to be added to the medium, that is sucrose as the organic source, then inorganic minerals, all the minerals, essential minerals that are required for plants' growth and development, then vitamins, amino acids, and most importantly, plant growth regulators. Alright. So plant growth regulators mainly used for this purpose are auxin and cytokinin. Auxin that is mostly used is 2,4-D, whereas for cytokinin it is benzyl aminopurine. Benzyl aminopurine. Alright. So these are the substances are to be mixed onto in specific concentration to form a proper or a specific culture media. Next thing is sterilization. Sterilization is also a very important strategy or an important method that is to be employed. Here we have to make every surface or even the plant cell or tissue that we are using. See, the plant cell or tissue that we will extract from the desired plant to be used to grow the new plants, we'll call those cells or tissues to be explant. Alright. So sterilization has to be done for the explant also and for all the apparatus that we are going to use in the lab, like for the test tubes or the culture media or for the all different types of apparatus, test tubes, etc. Everything has to be sterilized. Alright. So for the explant, we have to do surface sterilization, whereas for the laboratory apparatus we have to do complete sterilization. Complete sterilization can be done using an autoclave, or else it can be done using dry heat, etc. Alright. So the third and the most important thing that is to be kept in mind is aeration. Aeration and of course pH. We have to make sure that the culture media where the cells or tissues are being grown, they have to be properly aerated. And also the pH has to be strictly balanced and has to be maintained at 5.7. So the pH has to be maintained at 5.7. Alright. So keeping in mind all of these things, we'll have to go on with the procedure. So let us see what is the procedure for plant tissue culture. First of all, in plant tissue culture, we have to take the explant and we have to introduce it in the culture media. In the culture media, the first culture media where we are introducing the explant, we have to make sure that auxin and cytokinin, they have to be given or they have to be present in equal concentration. So first thing, we have to introduce explant in culture media where auxin should be equal to cytokinin. Alright. Now, when the explant or the cells are produced or are provided in a culture media where auxin is equal to cytokinin, in very less period of time, you will see that the cells will soon start rapidly dividing and they will produce a mass of undifferentiated cells. So soon, a mass of undifferentiated cells called callus would be produced. So once the callus is produced, we have to continuously allow it to grow, and for that we have to do subculturing. Subculturing means transferring the cells from one culture media to a new one, from old culture media to a new culture media. Why that is done? See, while the cells are growing, in the culture media, nutrient is diminishing, toxic material or toxin is accumulating. So that's why we have to make sure that there is no damage happening to the newly dividing cells. That's why we have to keep on transferring them from old culture media to a fresh or new culture media. That's what is called subculturing. Finally, we have to now go for shoot and root regeneration. From the cells, shoot or root regeneration can be easily done by adjusting the auxin or cytokinin's concentration. Like we all know that cytokinin, it will induce shoot formation, whereas auxin would induce root formation, isn't it? So it would happen like that. So first of all, now the cells are introduced to a culture media with more cytokinin than auxin. Now this will give rise to shoot formation. Shoot formation. Alright, shoot would be formed. Now once the shoots are around 2 to 3 centimeter long, then we have to again subculture these shoots, and we have to place it in a culture media where auxin this time will be more than cytokinin. So this time, next thing we have to do is auxin should be more than cytokinin. When auxin is more than cytokinin, there will be root formation. So shoot has been formed, root has been formed, we already have our plantlets. All we need to do is we have to now take them from the culture media and we have to place it in the soil for natural growing. But before that, we have a very important step here that is called hardening. Hardening means exposing those plantlets which have been growing under very controlled conditions so far. That means the plantlets, they have to be now hardened, means they have to be made to cope up with extreme, or you can say harsh conditions. Outside the lab, of course, the plantlets, they would not be having a controlled environment, right? They will be exposed to lower light or higher humidity or any other kind of harsh condition. Directly from the laboratory culture, if we put them in the harsh condition, they might not be able to cope with it and they might die. So that's why before we sow them in the soil, we have to make them hardened. So in hardening mainly, we expose those plantlets to lower light and higher humidity conditions so that they can cope up or adjust to the conditions, adjust to harsh conditions. And after hardening is done, release. Now finally, we can sow the plantlets in the soil where they can be growing and forming or becoming in no time clones to the desired plant. Alright, this is what is plant tissue culture. Let me revise it for you once again. At first, we have to extract the explant from a desired plant. That explant has to be properly sterilized, and then it has to be introduced to a culture media, a specific culture media, where auxin is equal to cytokinin. Alright. Next, soon we'll see that in the culture media, the cells have become a mass of undifferentiated cell, and that would be called as callus. Once the callus is formed, we have to keep on subculturing it and allowing it to rapidly grow and divide. Alright. Subculturing is done so that there is no damage happening to the cells. Finally, after subculturing, we have to introduce the cells to a culture media that contains first cytokinin more than auxin, that will allow shoot formation, and then we have to again introduce to a culture media where auxin is more than cytokinin so that it can induce root formation. So when shoot and root has been formed, the plantlets have been obtained, we have to harden them or expose them to harsh conditions before we can sow them into the soil. Alright. Now the last topic that we are going to discuss is somatic hybridization. So somatic hybridization is a process in which we take somatic cells from two plants which may be belonging to two different varieties or two different species or even two different genus. and then we hybridize them, means we fuse them. And as we fuse them, we get a complete different variety of a plant. Alright? So let's see how it is done. In somatic hybridization, suppose these are the two cells which I have taken, suppose, from two different species. Alright? These being the cell wall and these being the protoplasm. Alright? Now first we have to treat the two somatic cells with the enzyme cellulase and pectinase. Cellulase and pectinase will dissolve cellulose and pectin, and hence they will remove the cell wall of the somatic cells. Soon we'll receive the naked protoplast of both the cells. Now these two naked protoplasts have to be fused. This fusion is done either by electrofusion, that means high frequency alternating electric fields of short current pulses, or else chemofusion. That means by using certain chemicals like polyethylene glycol. Alright, by using high frequency electric field, or else by using certain chemicals we can fuse the two protoplasts. Now after fusing we can get three possibilities. After the protoplasm have been fused, we can have three types of consequences or result. In one of the result, we might get a cell where the cytoplasm and the nucleus of both the cells, both cytoplasm and nucleus have been fused together successfully. We will call this cell to be synkaryon. Alright. Second possibility would be that the two cells have been fused together by the cytoplasm, but as you can see the two nucleus have come closer to one another but have not fused. In this case we will call it heterokaryon. And the third possibility is that we get a cell where the cytoplasms have fused together, and out of the two nucleus, one have degenerated. So only one remains. So such a cell can be termed as cytoplasmic hybrid, or we can also call it cybrid. So these are the three possibilities that might happen during somatic hybridization. Now some important points related to this technique is as such. In somatic hybridization, this technique was first employed by Carlson et al. In 1972 in two different species of tobacco plant, that is Nicotiana Lansdorfi and Nicotiana glauca. Alright. Another important thing is that by somatic hybridization, so far a plant called pomato has been formed, that is a hybridization between potato and tomato. But unfortunately it did not have all the desired characteristics for commercial utilization. Alright. So this is the process all about. So let us meet in the next class. Thank you.